Nobody knew what that sweet-smelling lotion on the old barber's hands really was, until the night three men disappeared without a trace. The neighborhood knew him as Old Harry the Barber. Every morning he'd sip his tea, read the paper and wait for his customers. But they had no idea that the fragrant aftershave on his hands was actually a traceless chemical compound, or that his straight razor was designed for much more than just cutting whiskers. From which city around the world are you watching this video today? If this story intrigues you, don't forget to subscribe for more tales of silent heroes and hidden identities. In the back streets of Toronto's Kensington Market, tucked away in one of the narrow alleys off Augusta Avenue, stood Harry's barbershop. 50 years in the same spot, with the same old chairs and the same cracked mirrors. He'd open at 6 in the morning, close at 7 in the evening. Never took a break, never took a holiday. 75-year-old Harry Pemberton seemed like an ordinary barber to the locals. Grey beard, wrinkled hands, thick glasses. Every morning he followed the same routine: unlock the shop, turn on the radio, brew his first cup of tea. Then he'd wait for customers. But nobody knew Harry's past. In the early 1970s, as a young man, he'd been trained in Moscow. His name back then was Dmitri Volkov, one of the KGB's most elite agents. He'd come to Canada at age 25. His mission: live undercover for 20 years, wait and strike when the order came. But that order never came. When the Soviet Union collapsed, Dmitri Volkov became Harry Pemberton. He'd buried his identity so deep that sometimes even he forgot who he really was. He married, had children, cherished grandchildren. For 50 years, he lived the perfect cover life, until that phone call came. It was a cold November evening. Harry had just seen off his last customer and was cleaning his tools, as always. He washed his straight razor with soap, gathered the towels, wiped down the mirrors. That familiar scent of aftershave lotion filled his nostrils once again. The lotion was actually a simple chemical compound, traceless, odorless when needed, but highly effective when required. It had been developed in KGB laboratories. Harry had been using it as aftershave for 50 years. His customers would say, "You always smell so nice, Harry." They didn't know that scent came from a weapon that could eliminate someone without a trace within 24 hours if necessary. That evening, as he was closing the shop, the phone rang. Harry froze. In 50 years, this phone had rung only 3 times. The first brought news of his wife's labour. The second, news that his son was deployed overseas. The third had never come. When he answered, he heard a familiar voice speaking Russian. "Time for the raven to wake up." Harry's hand trembled. This was the code he'd been waiting 50 years to hear. But it was too late now. That young agent was dead, replaced by an old barber. "Wrong number," he said in English. "Dmitri, I know you." A voice may change, but an agent's breathing pattern never does. Harry hung up. But he knew this was just the beginning. The next day, 3 foreign customers came to the barbershop. All 3 spoke Russian. Harry half listened to them, their topics of conversation: old files, clean-up operation, final witness. When the first customer sat in the chair, he noticed the tremor in Harry's hands. "Are you feeling all right, sir?" the customer asked in English. He had an accent. "Old age," Harry said, gripping his razor. But the razor wasn't an ordinary barber's tool. Inside its handle were hidden buttons that couldn't be seen. Harry hadn't touched those buttons in 50 years. Now his fingertips could feel those familiar metal contacts. He gave the first customer a normal shave. Nothing happened. The second customer was more cautious. He watched every reflection in the mirror. Harry watched him back through the mirror. "Have you been in this neighborhood long?" the customer asked. 50 years, Harry replied. "That's a long time. You must have learned many people's secrets." Harry paused. This was no longer coincidence. The third customer was the youngest. As he sat in the chair, he muttered that barbers with KGB experience are quite rare. Harry's hand froze on the razor. "What did you say?" "I didn't say anything, sir." But it was too late. Harry knew now. These three men had come here to kill him. His 50-year-old past had surfaced, and it was time to clean him up. He raised the razor, pressed it to the young man's neck. "Did you come for a shave or to kill me?" The young man smiled. "Both." In that moment, Harry's reflexes from 50 years ago came alive. Dmitri Volkov was reborn. He pressed the hidden button in the razor's handle. The tool instantly transformed, no longer just a shaving instrument, but a lethal weapon. He cut the artery in the young man's neck. Silently, quickly, the other two men jumped to their feet. But Harry was no longer a barber. He remembered every technique he'd learned in Moscow 50 years ago. He poured the lotion, that innocuously fragrant chemical, on the second man's head. The man collapsed within 10 seconds. The third man tried to draw a gun, but Harry was faster. He slashed the man's hand with his barber scissors, then finished him off with the razor's hidden mode. 3 bodies, 3 minutes. After 50 years, Dmitri Volkov was back. But now he didn't know what to do. That night he cleaned the barbershop, used the traceless chemicals, made the bodies disappear. 50 years of experience paid off. The next morning, neighbours called for Harry. "Harry, why is the shop closed?" "Gone on vacation," he said. But the truth was Harry was gone. Only Dmitri Volkov remained, and he knew more agents would come. His wife called. "Harry, where are you?" "I'm worried." Harry's voice was shaking. "I need to go away for a bit, love. I love you so much." "What's wrong? I can tell from your voice something's happened." How could he explain? In 50 years of marriage, he'd never lied to her. Now he was telling his biggest lie. "Work thing. I'll be back in a few days." But he knew he could never return. That night he left Toronto. In his car's trunk were his equipment from 50 years ago: false passports, money, weapons. He'd kept them all in a hidden compartment in the barber shop. Crossing the border, Harry Pemberton died. Dmitri Volkov survived once again, but this time not just for himself, to protect his family. 3 months later, a new man came to the old barber shop in Toronto. He had a Russian accent. "Where is Harry?" he asked the neighbours. "Nobody knows. He vanished one night. His family? They're gone too. It's like they all just evaporated." The Russian searched the barber shop, every corner, every cabinet. But he found no trace. Harry had been a professional. He'd been waiting 50 years for this moment. A year later in Montreal, there was an elderly tailor. His customers called him Henri. He spoke perfect French, as if he'd been born and raised there. But in the evenings, when he closed his shop, he still used that familiar aftershave scent. And among his sewing tools, he kept a hidden straight razor. Because Dmitri Volkov never truly retired, he just changed form. In Toronto, there's now a coffee shop where the old barber shop used to be. Nobody knows what happened there. But sometimes the elderly locals remember Harry's aftershave always smelled so nice. They don't know that scent protected them for 50 years. And that old barber didn't just cut hair. When necessary, he did much more. In Montreal, Henry the tailor carefully watches every new customer who enters. Because he knew the past never truly stays buried, and those hidden buttons in his razor's handle still work. The radio in his Montreal shop sometimes plays the same station Harry listened to in Toronto. When he hears certain songs, he thinks of his wife, his children, his grandchildren, the family he had to leave behind to keep them safe. But late at night, when the shop is closed and the streets are empty, Henry practices the old movements. The ones he learned in Moscow, the ones that kept him alive for 50 years in Toronto. Because somewhere in Russia, in a building that officially doesn't exist, men in dark suits still have his file open. They still have his photograph from 1974, and they still have orders to complete. The phone in Henry's shop hasn't rung yet, but he knows it will. And when it does, he'll be ready. Because some secrets are too dangerous to stay buried. Some identities are too valuable to truly abandon, and some agents never really retire. They just wait for the next mission. In the mirror of his Montreal shop, Henry sometimes sees not his own reflection, but the faces of three men in a Toronto barbershop. The ones who came to kill Harry Pemberton but found Dmitri Volkov instead. He keeps their memory as a reminder. The moment you think you're safe, the moment you believe your past is truly behind you, that's when it catches up with you. But Henry learned long ago that survival isn't about forgetting who you were. It's about choosing who you become. And every morning, as he unlocks his shop in Montreal, applies that sweet-smelling aftershave, and sharpens his tools, Henri makes the same choice. To survive, to protect, to remember. Because in the world he comes from, forgetting means dying. And Henri, whether he's called Harry, Dmitri, or any other name, has no intention of dying anytime soon. Disclaimer: this story is entirely fictional and created for entertainment purposes. Any resemblance to real persons or events is purely coincidental.